So hello and welcome. And this is going to be a little bit different from some of your other sessions. I'm going to invite a whole lot of participation in the chat, and hopefully you'll join me with that because, as Catherine mentioned, I cannot see you, but I know you're out there. So let's just dive right in. So just give me one sec while I set it up so that I can see your chats, so that so that when you chime in, I'll be able to read it. Okay.
And Elizabeth, sorry, the other thing I forgot to tell everyone, if you have questions also for Elizabeth, please put them in the chat and I'll alert her when they're there if she doesn't see them. So let's use our chat today. And again, please make sure that you're doing it to all panelists and attendees so that we can see it. Thanks.
Thank you. So I'm going to just start by giving a little introduction about who I am and why this isn't BS. Because I think that as lawyers, when we start talking about some of the mental health things, sometimes our natural reaction is that it feels a little fluffy, and so I just want to acknowledge that, and also kind of contextualize it, why I think this is actually a really important work. So first and foremost, I am an educator. My first career was as an inner city school teacher with Teach for America in Washington, D.C., and then in the Durham Public Schools here in North Carolina. And after almost a decade of other things since then, that included law school here at UNC and practicing law for years with Prisoners Legal Services of New York, and then a brief but interesting stint as the director of career services at a top 20 law school before life brought us back to North Carolina, and I found my way back to my current work as a judicial educator at the School of Government. So the relevance of my background as an educator and as a lawyer are probably pretty obvious, but my time in career services, the conversations that I had with students and alumni, attorneys and judges, really fed a deep curiosity about how we build meaningful and satisfying lives. And I continue to do career and retirement coaching since I left that job. And I have seen the way that some people don't actually have to make significant career shifts, but with some minor adjustments to the way that they're working, or even just to the way that they think about work, they can find greater access to the meaning and what drew us to this work to begin with. And that's really what I want for you as we explore some of the strategies and take some time for reflection today. I want you to be able to connect, or perhaps reconnect, with a way of doing this work while honoring the full range of your life experiences. So that's actually a pretty lofty goal for our hour together, and it's why I don't think that this this is definitely important work. So there has been a precipitous rise in stress over our health, the health and safety, not to mention the finances and stability of friends and family and the literal entire world this year. And when we then add in the political unrest, and we can see that the ambient stress gets impressively high really quickly. So then when we add on to that, the way that changes in work-life boundaries perhaps seeped into something that looks more like doing everything at once all the time, while never feeling like you're getting anything done quite the way you'd like to. This might sound familiar to you, but I say this as a way of starting by acknowledging that this has not been a normal year, and that the frequent encouragement to self-care as a notion of bubble baths and candles is not going to cut it when we're talking about this kind of long-term sustained stress. I want to be sure that you hear me, that this little hour together is not going to fix everything that you might be feeling right now, though I certainly wish that I had that kind of power. Instead, I'm going to share as many tools as possible so that hopefully everyone connects with something that feels potentially helpful to you. These are tools and strategies and practices that will only help if you use them. And I want to clarify also that they are not all for every person or for every situation. Thus, we're going to do some reflection along the way so that you can start to sort of notice what might feel like it would be helpful to you. The article in the middle of this slide is from last month in the New York Times, and it quoted a Dr. Burnett Ziegler, a professor at Northwestern, as recommending that we try to avoid multitasking as much as possible. She was saying that we should keep only one window on our computer open at a time and resist the urge to toggle between work and whatever else we're doing, you know, not signing up the kids for camp at the same time. And I am not trying to call you out if that is literally what you're in the middle of right now. But I want to start by saying that if this doesn't sound possible to you, don't worry. This simple advice is not a solution that works for me when I'm frazzled or overloaded. But I think that reading the advice, I actually may have opened 3 more tabs in response, maybe looking her up to sort of like figure out if she really had the expertise to tell me how to be living, and asking Dr. Google for some easier alternatives. But kidding aside, I just want to acknowledge that simple wisdom may be helpful to you, but if it isn't, there are actually some techniques that might help us get to a similar kind of clarity or solution. So the first thing that I'm going to talk about is the Pomodoro Technique, and some of you may have tried it before. If you have, feel free to take the next minute to take a deep breath or sip on whatever beverage you have at hand. Or maybe consider this a refresher or a reminder that it's time to return to trying the Pomodoro Technique. The reason that this strategy is so helpful is that for many of us, when we get really busy, our to-do list can begin to feel overwhelming. And the one common response to overwhelm is that we might bounce back and forth between tasks without actually accomplishing all that much. So if you are like me and not particularly great at that initial simple advice of just turning off the notifications and distractions, this can help to kind of wrangle that attention. So the idea of these smaller chunks, and I'm not going to read the slide, but the idea of breaking the work into smaller chunks and then interspersing regular breaks into your work time can give your mind both the boundaries and the resources to be successful, even when there's a lot pulling at your attention. So the idea is simple, but I feel like the practice is a really useful scaffolding that makes it a little bit more practicable. So the most important piece is that you actually take that 5-minute break, and you can do whatever you want with it. You can give your mind and body a break. You could go for a walk, or stretch, or get a drink, or whatever sounds like a break to you. But the most important thing is you don't work during those 5 minutes, so that you actually come back to your task ready to focus again. So before we go any farther, and in case that first tip didn't already highlight this, I want to emphasize that the work we're going to do together today is really not about adding one more thing to your already very full life. This instead is about thinking about how we're doing the work that we're doing and how we're making decisions. So I have been talking for too long, and although I can't see your faces, I know you're out there and I'd like to hear from you. So I invite you now to check in with yourself, and in the chat, please note whether you're feeling like the red, yellow, or green part of the stoplight, and include one word or phrase that you're willing to share with the group that contributed to that assessment. It'll be useful for me to get a sense of the temperature in the room as we move forward, and just a reminder to, in the chat, make it to all panelists and attendees, please. So I'll get us started. Oh, there we go. I see, yeah, things on our mind. Yep, busy. Yes. I see you, Lachelle, almost out of gas is a lot of us. And Sylvia, yes, cautious. That sounds totally fair these days and right now. Yes, trying not to burn out. There are so many good answers in here. I mean, all of the answers are welcome, but this is really helpful to see. Yeah, a lot of yellow and green. Yeah, one more thing would make me turn to red. Okay, so hopefully some of the strategies we're going to try today will help to turn some of our yellows a little greener, even if it's just a, a lime green. Maybe bring some of our red towards yellow, or even orange. Just take a step in the direction of a little more ease. Thank you for those. So, okay, the next strategy is called box breathing. You may have tried it before. The Navy SEALs call it tactical breathing, and really it's just a fast way to put your body into a calmer state, which can then help to get your mind into a different state as well. Because when we've got our mind and our body both in a position where they can actually work together, we're more likely to be efficient at the things that we're doing, and it can help us stay out of some of that overwhelm. So we're going to just set ourselves up to make some good decisions and accomplish whatever it is that you have to return to working on next. So it's called box breathing for a number of reasons, ranging from the fact that there are 4 steps and that each step is equal in length. Other people call it box breathing because they like to imagine, as they're doing this breathing, that they are kind of tracing the sides of a square. So whatever, however you like to think about it, let's just give it, the main idea is that you're going to breathe in for the count of 4. And then without clenching your mouth closed or kind of constricting against it, you're going to gently hold your breath for 4 seconds, or for the count of 4, and then you're going to exhale for the count of 4 and hold again without constraining before you inhale again. So let's do it together now. You're going to take a deep breath in for the count of 4. This time we're just counting. And when you get to the top, you're just going to hold it gently before you exhale for the count of 4. And then you're going to let it go and exhale for the count of 4. And as you empty out your lungs, you're going to hold that emptiness for just 4 counts. Okay. So you might notice how you feel after doing that once, but we're going to try it a second time. And this time at the top, we're just going to hold the air in our lungs just long enough to consciously choose to exhale. This is just a variation on the box breathing. So you're going to inhale for the count of 4, and then you're going to just pause long enough to think, exhale, and then you're going to exhale. And you're going to do the same thing at the bottom, where you're going to exhale for the count of 4, and then you're going to pause and just think, inhale, before you do it again. So this is just a variation, and some people resonate better with different versions of this practice. So let's try that. Inhale for the count of 4, and just pause and think, exhale, and then let it go. Okay, so this is a strategy that I rely on a lot. If I get to a Zoom meeting early, or if I'm waiting at a stoplight, this is one of those things that just sort of can help counteract the, kind of the ambient stress and get you back in your body really quickly. So you'll notice a theme over these practices. While I will mix in some of the longer practices that require more attention from us, I also am going to give you lots of these kind of quick hits that you can just slide in and see if they can make a little difference. So this is where we're going to spend a fair amount of time, because mindfulness is a word that is everywhere these days. It is also it's also a big umbrella, so it has a lot of tools under it. And the word mindfulness has become so ubiquitous in advertisements and wellness culture that it has almost lost its meaning, I think. I'm hoping that today our conversation can help to recharge that meaning as we deepen our understanding of the concept. So we're going to start with a reflection. And because I want you to be honest, I want to include the caveat that if the things that come to your mind are not positive, I will not be offended. The point is not to say the right thing. It is just to notice whatever thoughts arise. So I'm going to give you about a minute or so to write in the chat whatever word or phrase, what comes to your mind when you hear the word mindfulness. Yeah. Okay, we're all over. This is great. And I think this really speaks to how all over the place mindfulness in the culture has become, ranging from everything from um, from the idea of healthy diets and meditation to, you know, peace. Lots of different. Also, I think of being deliberate. That's great, Kelly. I see lots of different reflections in there that point to lots of different parts of where we're seeing this. So I'm going to show you a really short video. So this is going to be the one time that I'm going to read a slide out loud all the way. But really, this is at the heart of mindfulness. So the 2 steps to mindfulness, as I define them, is maintaining a moment-by-moment awareness of our thoughts, feelings, bodily sensations, and surrounding environment. So that might sound familiar from the video. And keeping our judgments out of it. Resisting believing, for instance, that there's a right or wrong way to feel or think in any given moment. So I think the other way that I talk about the second kind of step most often is to think of it as curiosity instead of judgment. So okay, now here's where this is a benefit that you guys don't have to, you know, I cannot see you. Your faces are not, you're protected by the invisibility cloak of being on a webinar. So no one will see you look foolish, but go with me on this for just a second. Imagine you're at home, you may well be, but imagine you're at the sink in your bathroom and just, you're gonna act this out. Show me what it looks like when you reach out and grab your toothbrush. So when I do this in person, you know, it's a much sillier event because everybody's just sort of reaching out across the table. But the point is that you probably, if you did this, you didn't have to think about it. You just automatically knew. And that's because most of us, most of the time, are following these scripts that we've written for ourselves so that we don't have to constantly make decisions. We do our morning routines and we brush our teeth, usually with our dominant hand. We don't have to think about it. We just do things the way that we're used to doing them. And in the days when we're driving to the office, we usually drive the same way every day. Or these days, if you're working from home, maybe you do the same route from the bedroom to the office or the dining room table or wherever it is that you're working. But you know, we greet people the same way we're used to greeting them. We don't think about how we're doing a lot of the things that we're doing on a day-to-day basis. And even with the jobs that you have, where you have to respond to new facts and new faces every day, there are ways that you get through your work that are comfortable to you, that are your default. And I am not saying that there is anything wrong with the way that you're doing things. I'm just going to suggest that you might feel more in control of your life, or the data suggests that we might even feel calmer or happier when we are aware of the choices that we're making. So it's really just like the video said, it's the difference between the automatic reactions to the world around us and then the conscious responses. So mindfulness does not require a special time or place, even though we might think of sitting on a cushion or, you know, yoga class or whatever. You can practice mindfulness anywhere in the middle of whatever it is that you're doing. Mindfulness is about being aware of whatever is happening in any moment. And it's about, excuse me, it is about noticing what's happening in the mind and in the body, not silencing them. It's not about trying to change what's happening. So that is to say that mindfulness is not about changing the facts, but about, my slides are slow here. It's just changing our relationship with them. So meditation is one tool for building the skill of mindfulness. And there are lots of styles of meditation. We might have, if we were to put it in the chat, we might have just as many different ideas of what it means to meditate or where it comes from. But the one that we're really going to talk about today draws on the work of Dr. Jon Kabat-Zinn, the professor and creator of the Stress Reduction Clinic and the Center for Mindfulness in Medicine at UMass Medical School. And he spent his career finding the scientific benefits and applications of these practices. And I'm really rooting our conversation in his work because my own experience is really rooted there. Over 5 years ago, I participated in one of his mindfulness-based stress reduction programs. And it's really where I became a deep believer in the benefits of mindfulness meditation. In that program, I also overcame what I think of as the biggest misconception about meditation. And it's one that I held, and this might sound familiar to you, but it's the idea that if we can't quiet down our minds, then we must not be good at meditation. And I want to, to battle against that misconception, because when we notice our mind wandering and then we bring it back to whatever thing we're paying attention to, it's really building this metaphorical muscle of mindfulness. Okay, we're going to start with a really short practice just to give you a little taste of mindfulness meditation. And so, as the cartoon of Dan Harris suggested, I invite you to start by sitting up straight or getting comfortable in whatever position you're in, and then close your eyes. And okay, so now that you're sitting comfortably with your eyes closed, we're going to take a couple deep breaths. Okay, once you've taken those deep breaths, we're going to just let our breath settle into whatever natural rhythm it goes back to. You're just going to notice how it feels to breathe as your body naturally breathes. You might pay attention to the cool air entering at your nose. You might focus on the feeling of breath in your throat. You might instead focus on the rising and falling of your chest or belly. Choose a spot and just stay there. Your mind will wander because that's what minds do. Your mind is like a puppy, and you're trying to train it to stay. Just as a puppy will pop up again and again, your mind will wander. You would probably bring a puppy back on task with treats or kindness, and I invite you to apply that same attitude to your mind. Okay, that's it. Open your eyes and notice how you feel. And in the chat, please post something that you noticed about that experience. It could be that it was uncomfortable. It could be that it was kind of nice to pause. Whatever it was, just put something that you noticed in the chat. Yeah, I don't do this enough. That's so great. I'm so glad. I really do want this hour to end up giving us some time to actually do these things, and ideally, leave us in a better position for the rest of the afternoon. Yeah, great. Thank you. Thank you for sharing those responses. For those of you who may not have chosen to dive in on the chat, that's okay. I want to recognize that even when we're trying not to judge our experience, you may be noticing unpleasant responses to this exercise, and that is okay too. There is not one right way to be responding to this. Just notice what's happening and consider these little tools or interventions that are on this slide that might help kind of work with those judgments that are natural and arise for a lot of us. The practice of becoming mindful of the body can help us to build that metaphorical muscle that I keep talking about mindfulness, because of the ways that it offers us the opportunity to practice over and over again in tiny moments throughout the day. So one way to build mindfulness of the body is the body scan. And we're going to try that together for just a few minutes. So without trying to change anything that you're feeling, we're just going to check in with your body to see what's happening there. So step one is to please close your eyes. And if that's not comfortable for you, just sort of like lower your gaze. It can help us to focus and tune in. Okay, you might take a deep breath as we get started. The first thing you're going to do is you're going to notice what you feel in your toes. You might notice the temperature. Perhaps there's buzzing or numbness. Maybe no sensation at all jumps out at you. That's okay too. Now you're going to turn your attention to the rest of your feet. The top, the bottom of your foot, moving on up, feeling into the ankle. Now you're going to notice what you sense in your lower legs, your shins, and your calves. Keep moving your attention up as you arrive at your knees. You're going to just feel what you notice at the top of your knee, on the back of your knee, and then moving your attention, feel your thighs. Any pressure from sitting, feel into the top of your thigh. And as you follow your attention upwards, you're going to feel into your hips. Any tightness, any warmth, whatever sensation you notice is fine. Now bring your attention to your abdomen. You might notice muscle tightness, hunger, temperature sensation. Now your lower back. What can you feel in the muscles of your back? Is there any sensation on your skin? As you follow your attention upwards, feel into your chest. Notice the expansion and contraction with your breath. Feel into your upper back. Notice your back ribs, your shoulder blades, any sensation that's happening there. Feel into those shoulders. Now notice what you can feel in your arms. Upper arms, elbows, forearms, wrists. Moving our attention into our hands, the palm of your hand, the back of your hand, your fingers. Turning our attention now to our neck, the skin of our neck, how it feels in our throat as we breathe. bring your attention to your face, your jaw, your mouth, your nose, your cheeks, ears, eyes, forehead, scalp. What can you feel at the back and top of your head? All right, now maybe take one more deep breath and open your eyes. And once again, let's sort of check in the chat. How did that feel? How was that different from from just paying attention to breathing? It was a lot longer. How did it feel to check in with the sensations in your body? Okay. Yeah, interesting. Okay, so I'm going to give you a faster, I'm going to, as I said, as I sort of promised, hard to describe. Okay, relaxing. All right. Yeah, that's great. I'm glad that this over caffeinated is a real thing. And it's just, there's no bad way to feel. We're just going to feel antsy sometimes. So, okay, lots of good information there, but we're gonna mix it up and now dive back into a short mindfulness moment here. As this is another practice that you can just do on the fly. It is called the stop practice, and it's a great tool if you're feeling stressed or reactive. So, stop is an acronym, and it stands for stop, which I think is like there's a rule against that in acronyms, but we're doing it anyway. So you're going to stop, pause, set down what you're doing, just disengage from the moment. And then you're going to take a breath and feel the full cycle of breathing in the body. And then once you've done that, you're going to observe. Just lift your eyes off of what you were, off of that email that you just read that was making you feel reactive, and you're going to look around you and notice literally what's happening around you, and then also notice what's happening in your body, what's happening in your thoughts, and you're going to get really curious. As I mentioned, that's one of my favorite words with this, and then you're going to proceed. You're going to, whether it is making a different choice than the one you were about to make in your reactive state, or whether it's returning exactly to where you were with a little more perspective and a little more space and ease, you're just going to get on with your life. So that's a fast one to have in your toolkit. Okay, moving on. Sensory clarity is the ability to keep track of what we're actually experiencing in the moment. I don't know about you, but but I do not usually pause to see the color and savor the aroma of my coffee in the morning. It is not that slow an experience for me. I will tell you though that when I was sort of testing this theory, I put a Post-it on the coffee pot, and so that when I'm going to pour the coffee, I had a note that just said notice. And it was definitely an interesting change of pace and a different experience. So with that, here is another quick practice. We are going to spend the next minute or two being mindful of sound. So once again, I invite you to close your eyes, because it can be easier to notice sound when our eyes are closed and we're just focusing in. You will hear the sound of my voice. But as I stop talking, I want you to tune in to what else you hear. Tune in to whatever's happening in your space. Maybe you hear other people moving or talking nearby. Maybe you hear the sound of cars on the street outside, or the heat or air conditioning running. Whatever you hear is fine. And if you don't hear any sounds at all, that's also fine. Just notice what you can hear. Okay, now open your eyes. So I'm not gonna make you check in after that one. We're gonna do another sensing exercise. And I want to remind you that we have room right now for whatever you experience in this moment. So we're gonna also keep in mind that the goal is simply to notice what is happening. So without judging it, even if we notice the judgments arise, we're gonna try not to put that judgment on whatever comes up. So when thoughts and feelings arise, we're going to just make a little mental note. Oh, I'm thinking. Oh, I'm worrying. Oh, I'm multitasking, or I'm planning ahead. All of that is okay. And then we're just going to return our attention to this new thing that we're trying out. So now let's take a deep breath and settle into the experience that's available right now through our senses. I'm not asking you to close your eyes this time, because the first thing that we're going to do is to notice 5 things that you can see. So I'm going to invite you to look beyond the broad strokes of the objects around you. Perhaps look away from the computer. Really notice what you're seeing. Perhaps there's dust on the shelf next to you, or noticing a crack in the paint that you haven't seen before. You're just going to look around and make a mental note of 5 things that you see. Okay, now you're going to notice 4 things that you feel. So it could be the texture of your clothing, the pressure of your legs against the chair. You're probably tuned in to this because you've just been feeling in your body. So maybe you feel the floor beneath your feet or the temperature in the room. Just a quick mental note of 4 things you feel. So again, since we've done a sound practice, this may feel, you may be thinking, I already know what I can hear, but check in and see if it's changed. Notice if perhaps there's a bird or a car passing by now, and just make a little note of 3 things that you can hear right now. Okay, see, these don't have to take that long. And then this is my COVID irony slide. Notice 2 things you can smell if you can. Perhaps your cologne or your shampoo has a scent that you usually tune out, but instead you can take a moment and notice what you smell. Maybe you've got food or drink nearby and you can investigate those. And then the last one is just to notice 1 thing you can taste if that's available to you right now. All right, so you can run through that 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 really quickly, and it does not have to be a practice that takes much space. It's certainly something that's available to us pretty much anywhere we are. But this last slide, as we move out of mindfulness and onto other things, is about how to implement this, how to make this practicable. So, people in the chat have mentioned that this is appealing or this is calming or this, I ought to do more of this, or I don't do this at all in my regular life. And all of those things are fine. And, but if you find yourself thinking, I don't do enough of this and I'd like to, then I just want to take a minute to talk about how that might look. And what opportunities there are to sort of support that intention. So there are lots of timers available for free online, and there are apps that can do this. The idea is just to set a timer that will go off at certain intervals. I had one for a while on my computer for work, and it just sort of dinged every hour, and that was just a reminder to sort of get out of that autopilot that we've talked about. So yeah, just as a reminder to check in. So some people find smartwatches to be a useful tool, with their vibrating reminder that you maybe, need to get up and move, and when that happens, using that as a reminder to sort of pay attention to where you are and how you're doing. That can be a helpful tool as well. So, because I teach with judges a lot, one of the things that they talk about is sort of what they can do while on the bench to sort of check in. And I had a judge who talked about that he really liked to hold his hands like this, and that at some point he would just sort of give them a little squeeze and notice what he could feel in his hands. And that was like a really easy and accessible, without looking, without having his hand on his chest or having to close his eyes in the middle of court. He could just sort of check in with himself that way. And I thought that was a great idea. Also, just taking one deep breath, like I think that sometimes as we do these practices together, the most important part is that first breath as we just kind of get a little more present with that, really feeling into one deep breath. And then, as I mentioned, the idea of leaving yourself a reminder. It doesn't have to be on your coffee pot. It could be, it could be on your toothbrush, or it could be, on the mirror, or on your steering wheel, or on your chair. But leaving a reminder to just check in and get out of that autopilot. Those are all helpful tools that I've used and found some success with. So, moving on from mindfulness, I wanted to invite your input again, okay, in the chat, about what is the first word that comes to mind for you when you hear the word wellness. So while you're writing, I'll just say, yeah, health, exercise, great. When I started thinking about this session, I realized that really part of my work this afternoon is just to take back words that have become overused and maybe misused in popular culture. Because yes, okay, I see a lot of this stuff. Yeah, because for like a lot of you, wellness made me think of yoga or goop or papa fads for various cleanses or whatever. Maybe a relaxing candle, but well-being is really what we're driving at in the way that we're going to talk about it today. And it's the understanding that our mental health and our physical health are linked, and that they both affect how we feel in our lives. And so self-care, wellness, this stuff is any activity that we do that is, whether it's, preventative or healing, taking care of our mental, emotional, and physical health. So I'm going to start with a really simple one. One thing that's accessible to most of us, even during COVID, is a strategy that science says can help us feel more connected and calmer without changing anything else. And that is just go outside. If you go into if you have green places close to your house and you go into them and add exercise, great. But most important piece is just to be outside, breathing fresh air. And this is, for those of us who work in jobs that require being in front of a computer, we spend a lot of time indoors, and so just remembering to get outside, especially as the weather is turning and it's so nice. It is not just an indulgence, but something that can have a big impact on how you're feeling. Okay, this next one, planning ahead and holding time can really help us to make adjustments that we want to make. So this platform isn't super conducive to actually letting me kind of game plan with you, but I wanted to plant the seed anyway because I just think it's so important. I want to suggest that you might be surprised by what you can cut out or get rid of. If you're feeling, I saw, at the beginning, there was some comment about there's not room for anything else in my life. And I hear you, I believe you, I'm not doubting that a bit. I definitely know that can be the feeling. And especially these days, I want to suggest that we kind of get a little radical about how we're thinking about what's in our life. And I'm going to give you an example. So I was coaching a woman, and this happened about a year ago, that she was losing a lot of time. She was talking about how stressed she was about the number of conference calls she was on. And after identifying this as a serious drain on her resources and her time, she decided that we chose a strategy that would help with that particular thing. And basically what she chose was that before she would RSVP for a conference call, she would ask, is this essential? And if it was, then she would also ask, will it create more work? So if she didn't get past the first question, it didn't matter. She wasn't going to go to that conference call. But if it was essential and it was going to make more work, then she could kind of think about the boundaries that she needed to be ready for, or think about the spaces that she could make before she went into that call. So it's that same idea of just challenging what we have to do and what we feel like we have to do. And then also being a little bit more intentional about how we engage. So I was hoping to give you some time to do some reflection on this, but I'm just going to have to leave this as a seed that's planted, as we're running low on time. But I do want to suggest that using your calendar, thinking about whether you use your calendar just to do the broad strokes of your life, or whether you include some details, it can really make a big difference, because some of us find ourselves, when we just do the broad strokes of like the things that you have to do as the things that you put on your calendar, you can, these days you can easily wind up in back-to-back Zoom meetings all day long, leaving yourself no space to actually do the work that's coming out of those. And so then, it starts to encroach on other spaces and really create a lot of maybe not so welcome feelings in how we're dealing with it. So some of that, just kind of noticing where the pressure is happening, and then figuring out whether there's something you can remove or something that you can kind of like a way to hold space. And I think that this is advice that has been around since when I was using paper calendars. and you may still be using paper calendars. They can be very helpful. But my point is, this is not new advice, but the idea of at the beginning of the week or at the beginning of the month, putting on your calendar the things that you really want to make time for in your life before it gets all the nooks and crannies get filled in with the other demands on your time is one strategy that really helps. Because even if you don't make it to that yoga class at right at 5 every Tuesday, you're a lot more likely to get there if you have it and have the 20-minute buffer or whatever. If you put that on your calendar, then even if you schedule over it sometimes and have to do other things, make other choices, you will have done it consciously, and you're way more likely to get there more often if it's there first. So anyway, that may feel obvious, but I'm a huge advocate for using the calendar to help us get the life we want. So you may have heard about the negativity bias, but this is the idea that our brains are better at noticing and holding on to negative experiences than to positive ones. And this made sense evolutionarily, of course, since we needed to pay attention to danger in order to avoid it. In law school, we have all spent years really fine-tuning that already highly evolved skill. We were issue spotting and looking for potential problems that might be arising in a case, and that serves us well at work. But it's a hard way to move through the world. So I've seen it proposed, actually, that the negativity bias is one explanation for why the mental health outcomes for lawyers are so much worse than for some other groups, just that we have over-invested in this negativity bias. So one strategy to help counterbalance that is that built-in bias that we have is to build the corresponding piece of our mind that is like scanning for the good things. And one way to do that is through gratitude practices. And I have a few examples, but mental noting is kind of what it sounds like. Gratitude journaling is a practice of every day, ending the day with 3 to 5 little quick notes to yourself about what worked that day. And the specifics of keeping it to the day that it happened is really helpful, because it really is what most helps that mind get retrained out of the negativity bias. And it's not really out of that, but also to train the part of it that is scanning regularly for what's good. You might do a gratitude jar where you just jot a gratitude anytime and then get to see them sort of accumulate. Words of appreciation, pointing it outwards and thanking the people in our lives who make them, make them the lives that we want to be living. Also, dinner time sharing. I'm speeding through these, and I apologize for that. But I know we are out of time, and I just want to remind you that small changes can make a really big difference. I said I'd come back to my story about Dan Harris. He's my favorite mindfulness teacher, and he is the ABC News anchor who famously had a panic attack on air and then discovered meditation as a tool to help. And he promotes the idea that even 1 minute a day is a great place to start, because when you begin to notice that 1 minute a day makes a difference, then you might find yourself adjusting your dosage as you go. But regardless, starting where you are rather than where you wish you are is the fastest way to feel a whole lot better. So thank you so much for your time and attention, and I hope that you have a great rest of your afternoon.